I saw this over on Matt DeBerry's Twitter earlier today. He asked the question: was Todd Gurley's performance against Clemson in 2014 the greatest performance, he said, in Sanford Stadium history? I'm going to say this century. And there's a couple other ones to look at, but Todd Gurley that day, y'all, went 15 carries for 198 yards for 3 touchdowns rushing, and he added a 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. That's almost that's almost 300 yards of action and 4 touchdowns. Now there have been some other players who played pretty well in Sanford, but I'm going to tell you why. I think there's one other that might compare with him very directly. Two running backs had really good days against Georgia. Cadillac Williams in 2001, he had 167 yards rushing and another 71 receiving. I mean, that's pretty impressive, to be honest, on 45 touches to go for that many yards. Just 45 touches, period. Melvin Ingram had a fumble return for a touchdown and a 68-yard punt, fake punt run for a touchdown in South Carolina's win over Georgia in 2011 when they scored 3 non-offensive touchdowns and won by 3. And so then Kenny Irons, also another running back at Auburn in 2005, I think it was, went 37 carries for 179 yards and 2 touchdowns. So those are some really good performances by the other team at the stadium. But Todd Gurley, it's really hard to remember. This is almost 10 years ago now. In 2014, it was an extremely hot day in Athens. And Georgia was coming off a pretty disappointing season in 2013. A lot of injuries, including Todd's. And what was going on was, Georgia had probably the most gifted backfield it's ever had, and maybe still. So that was Todd Gurley, Nick Chubb, Keith Marshall, and Sony Michel. And 2 of those 3 are first-round NFL draft picks. One is Nick Chubb, and the other is Keith Marshall, who's really not that bad at running the ball either. It was just Brendan Douglas was on that team as well, by the way. But it was a loaded up backfield, and Hudson Mason was limited, frankly. This was his first start as quarterback. Now, let me get into the backstory of this. Let me tell you this first. A lot of people have still been ordering double dogs. If you want to get a free edition of it, you sign up for our newsletter. It's the only link down below. I'm giving 5 of these away in exactly 9 days on the 16th, excuse me. If you order double dogs, that's awesome. But if you want to get it for free or try to, I'm giving 5 away. But you have to sign up for the newsletter between when I started this, I can't remember what day it was, until the 15th. Once we start the 15th, that's it. So sign up now. It doesn't cost you anything to sign up. So you're coming into that season in 14. You've lost Aaron Murray, and Georgia, I think, was an 8-point favorite to beat Clemson that afternoon, whatever it was. It became a night game. And, so this is Deshaun Watson's first game as a quarterback. He did not start in the game, but he did throw a touchdown. And, Clemson had come off an okay year. I'm trying to remember in 13, I think they had kind of dilly-dallied around. They did not, Florida State won the national championship, so they could not have won the ACC. So this is sort of a backyard brawl kind of deal. And, Todd, the backstory here is that I'm remembering so much now. When Todd came down to it, he was picking between Clemson, Georgia, and Alabama was kind of out. So at his commitment ceremony up in Tarboro, North Carolina, he had a cake made. And the person that made the cake was trying to dye the cake. There's no such thing as red flour. So you have to use food coloring. And the food coloring, when he cut into the cake, it looked orangish. So, it looked like for a second there was some confusion, at least, as did he pick Georgia or did he pick Clemson? So that's one part of this. But the second part is, you got to remember in 13, Georgia was up 21-7 on Clemson. Let me check this real quick. They lost the game, as we recall. It's the last time Georgia lost to Clemson was in 2013. And they were up in that game, though, and they really kind of had pretty good control of it, to be honest with you. They were up. No, that's not right. They were up 21-14. That's what I was thinking about. Okay. They were at 21-14. They're sort of trading blows. And then Todd got hurt. And that really that changed that game, obviously, because he came back later in the game, but that he got hurt running for a touchdown. Keith came in. Todd had 12 carries in that game, and then Keith had 16. They both scored. Keith scored 2 touchdowns, and Keith scored one. And I was in the huddle before Georgia. I mean, as the players broke it down before. So I'm remembering now. It wasn't just Keith Marshall that got hurt. This is the game at Clemson where Malcolm Mitchell got knocked out for the season with an ACL injury on one of Todd's long touchdowns. I'm trying to remember. So this was all the backstory here. Yeah, Todd had a 75-yard touchdown run, and he got hurt soon thereafter, or it might have been on that play, but Malcolm Mitchell got hurt on that play. So you're talking about two of their best players getting hurt and missing for Malcolm the remainder of the game. And for it was one play, boom. Keith took it was a one as Keith Todd took a one play drive, it was a one play drive for 75 yards. So here we are the next year. And Georgia is huddling up at midfield, and Clemson's in their all whites, as they do often on the road. And they huddle up, and Todd has some very choice words to say about the Clemson Tigers. I am not going to repeat them, but I don't know if that's because of what happened in 13, or if that's what just he says before, or he said before every single game. I need to reach out to Todd and see if he'll come on, but. Um, that night, and this is a fact, this is a real thing. You can go look it up. As Georgia was going further into the game, they were having a hard time getting separation from Clemson. They were the better team, but like they weren't pushing away from Clemson far enough. And this is already after Todd's 100-yard touchdown. I feel like now I'm this is a long time ago, so I'm going back and looking as we go. But what happened in the third? I believe it was the third quarter or the fourth quarter of this game is that Georgia didn't throw a pass. So they got to the point in the game where they did not throw a pass anymore. That is amazing. I mean, that is an amazing thing. So at the half, it was 21-all. And I don't think Clemson scored again. Yeah. So at the half, it was 21-all, and Georgia was just like struggling throwing the ball. So Hudson comes out, and they're having a hard time completing passes. And so it got to the point that I'm trying to see exactly where it was that was it. And I think it was a third down play where they should have run the ball. They should have thrown the ball, Georgia, and they ran it. And it was it was Todd Gurley that ran that ball. It was late in the third quarter, or it might have been the fourth. But yeah, so the fourth quarter, Georgia's up 24-21, and they were facing a third and whatever it was, and that was it for Hudson Mason throwing the football that night. It was over. And, so in the fourth quarter of that game is when really Todd came alive. So 2-yard gain, 38-yard gain, 18-yard touchdown. And then, he was just a machine in that fourth quarter. And it was just They wanted no part of Todd Gurley. I don't want any part of Todd Gurley at any point, but they wanted no part of Todd Gurley in that fourth quarter. So he went 2 yards, 38 yards, 18 yards. And then he went, let me see here. Then he went 51 for a touchdown. And that was his last drive. He had four carries in the fourth quarter. Two of them were touchdowns. Now, don't forget Nick Chubb's what was that? How long was Nick's? Yeah, 47. So they gashed them for 47, and then the next time they got the ball. So here's how it went. This was Clemson just basically giving up. Todd scored an 18-yard touchdown. The next offensive play for Georgia, Todd scored a 51-yard touchdown. No, I misspoke. Excuse me. Todd scores an 18-yard touchdown. Next offensive play, Nick scores a 47-yard touchdown. Next Georgia offensive play, 51-yard touchdown, 45-21, game over. Nick scored again, but they called it back for illegal procedure. That score should have been 52-21. But that night, I mean, Todd Gurley was amazing. And when I say amazing, I mean amazing. 23-yard run for a touchdown in the first quarter, all right? He comes back with midway through the second quarter, after Clemson's grabbed a 21-14 lead, he scores a 100-yard touchdown that Steve Spurrier made fun of Dabo about because he said he kicked it right down the middle of the field and let Todd Gurley do that. But 4 touchdowns and almost 300 yards of total offense. I mean, some people get really sort of in their feelings when I start talking about Todd Gurley versus Herschel Walker. To which I would say, I know Herschel Walker would be a good running back in the 20, whatever we're in now, 20, that would be the 20 teens. I am certain that Todd Gurley would have been one because I saw it. If you take Todd Gurley from 2014 and put him in 1980, he blows people away. Now, I know it's sacrilegious to talk that way, but I'm just telling you right now, if I'm picking one person to be the running back at Georgia, one game scenario, 1980, whenever, between those two, we're just taking one of the two. I got Todd.